Welcome everybody. My name is Paul White. I'm the Vice President of Member Services at the Eclipse Foundation, and I want to welcome you all to the members meeting. We do this on a quarterly basis. The last time we did this was face-to-face, actually, in Germany at EclipseCon Europe. So this is the first time doing it via live stream in a few quarters. But it's nice to have everybody join us. Just to let everyone know, we are live streaming this. And for some of you, at least, you may want to adjust the resolution. We're finding that some of the resolution by default is set to relatively low. So you may want to adjust that if you're watching this live. The other thing is there's a chat box along the right-hand side that you can enter any questions that you have, and we'll address those questions at the end of the session. So feel free to pose those questions. Just so you know, we are also going to record this, and if you're watching this via a recording, you can also post your questions on the YouTube video, and we'll moderate that over the next few days, and we'll respond to you get back to you with a response. You can also email me any questions that you might have. So with that, let's get started. Just a quick outline of the agenda. So Mike Milinkovic is here. He's going to give us an update on the goings-on with the foundation, and also an update on the EPL version 2. Wayne Beaton is going to give us an update on the projects and the activities there, and I'll also do a quick update on conferences and activities. So you know, Ian Scarrett, Vice President of Marketing, is also in the meeting. He's not formally on the agenda, but if there are any questions, he can jump in and answer them. And finally, Stephanie Swart is also with us, and she's going to be moderating all the questions that come in. So just to let you know who's joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Alrighty. Thanks, Paul. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining. Let's see. So my Executive Director update is going to be short and sweet. First thing I wanted to talk about is the board election results. We had decent turnout. Certainly didn't set a record or anything, but sort of consistent with past years. And the results are in, and the new elected board reps for this year, the committee reps, are Ed Merckx, Mikhail Istria, and Chris Aniszek. Sustaining reps, Tracy Miranda, Torkild Maritime, and Gunnar Wagenknecht. So welcome, everybody. And this is actually a fairly significant turnover at the board level. So we've got 4 new representatives. So Danny Megert, thank you for your past service, and as well as Mick Kirsten, Matthias Zimmerman, and Chris Holmes. All of you were very much appreciated on the board, and we're sorry to see you go, but it's good to have some new faces on the board, some new ideas, and looking forward to working with all the new directors. Just one last editorial comment on that topic. These seats are very important to the governance of the Eclipse Foundation. Historically, the elected reps have had some of the strongest voices on our board of directors. And I just wanted to sort of remind everybody to participate in the elections and to put your name forward if you are interested in how the Eclipse Foundation governs itself. Because these people and these positions are very, very important to how the Eclipse Foundation evolves, and they always have been. And so it's definitely something that is well worth your time and effort if you're interested. In terms of membership, we're at 260 member companies, including 11 strategic members. We're just right around 1,400 committers. And in terms of growth, if you look at back historically, for a couple of quarters, it's pretty consistent growth. We've been at 260 since the end of 2016, but if we go back to October, you can see the number of new members joining us. A lot of these are some of these are upgrades. So Renaissance went from associate to solutions, but also welcome to Docker, Samsung, and represent, just as a few others. I'm not going to go through all of them, but appreciate the support and the involvement and commitment to the Eclipse community. Again, continuing here, there's a number of companies there, Payera, London Java Community, as examples that joined as part of the micro profile initiative. And very, very happy to have them. For those who don't know about DLR, the second bullet there, that's the German equivalent of, say, NASA or the Canadian Space Agency. So it's great to have them participating at the Eclipse Foundation as well. New working group members. So we've had quite a few new members at IoT that you can see there. Then one in OpenPass, Location Tech, and PolarSys respectively. A quick financial update. So you can see that going back, let's talk a little bit first about 2016. Our original budget was to have a net loss of $500,000 based on revenue of 5.5 million, expenses of 6. We actually came in significantly better than that. Revenue was 5.4, expenses were 5.6 for a net loss of 200K. So we definitely came in better than the original budget, which is actually historically something that we seem to do a lot. And hopefully we can do that again this year. But 2017, the board approved budget was 6.3 million in revenue and 6.8 million in expenses. A lot of the jump that you're seeing there from 5.4 to 6.3 and 5.6 to 6.8, a lot of what you're looking at there is conference expense, not sort of like the mainline operations of the foundation. Projected loss of 500,000. So that's the board approved budget for 2017. All right, moving forward, I want to the next topic, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this. We are redoing the Eclipse Public License, which is the basic license that every, not every, but most projects the Eclipse Foundation uses. And we have not updated the EPL since the creation of the Eclipse Foundation 13 years ago. And as we get into this, you'll see the motivations for why it's time to change. But just a brief history on the EPL version 1. It was based on its predecessor, the Common Public License, which was written circa 2001. That was an IBM license. The Eclipse license was approved back in 2003, just briefly before the creation of the Eclipse Foundation. It was part of the discussions that led to the Eclipse Foundation, but it's basically the same as the license that was drafted in 2001. There's only really two changes, which was it slightly narrowed, no, not slightly, it narrowed the scope of patent termination in the event of a patent lawsuit, and changed the license steward from IBM to the Eclipse Foundation. And so the license says, so basically the EPL license as we have it today dates back to about 2001. So some of the goals and motivations for EPL v2. So one is the EPL version 1 uses the word modules. We've had some feedback that that's a little bit nebulous and confusing, so we're going to change that to the more concrete files. Choice of law has been something that something we've run into numerous times. The EPL version 1 says that the choice of law is New York State, and this has been an issue that's come up a number of times over the years, especially with the number of companies and projects that we have in Europe. Interpreting the license with a US-centric interpretation was viewed as problematic by some. And it's actually, doing this means that we're going to have to add some definitions, because by choosing a specific legal framework, you can avoid some certain definitions, but certainly in this case, we need to define derivative work. And one other thing I'd like to point out on the choice of law is that the EPL is one of the top 10 licenses, open source licenses, as we regularly see from the Black Duck surveys that they do. So it's one of the top 10 licenses in open source. It is the only one in the top 10 that actually stipulates a choice of law. So the Apache license, the Mozilla license, the GNU licenses, none of those other licenses actually specify a choice of law. So we've actually always been a bit of an outlier in there. Some modernization items. So we want to make sure that the EPL is clear for use with scripting languages where the source code and the executable code are one and the same. We want to be a little bit clearer that it's okay to point to the Eclipse Foundation or some other open source repository as where you can find the source code. The EPL version 1 says that you have to copy all of the source code and make it available yourself if you want to distribute EPL code. And frankly, that may have been okay in 2001, but it's unnecessary copying as far as we're concerned. Right, we want to make sure that it's explicit that subclassing EPL code does not create a derivative work, and just by subclassing, you don't have to EPL your product, for example, and clean up some stuff about notices. And then one of the big ones is GPL compatibility. So what we want to do there is for projects that want to be GPL compatible, they can choose to do so when the project is starting up. And then there's some miscellaneous cleanup that we'll talk about in a second. But what did not change? So at least in the current draft, there are like the copyright license, the patent license, patent termination, commercial distribution. These are sort of the topics that lawyers lawyers really focus in on. They are unchanged. We had a couple of phone calls this morning. We might add one phrase to the copyright license, but that's still hasn't been confirmed. But fundamentally and effectively, those major components of the license remain unchanged. So who's been working on this? So we have an IP advisory committee of the board of directors, and so the individuals listed there are the members of that committee and have been doing most of the heavy lifting on these drafts. There is a public discussion on EPLdiscuss@eclipse.org, and I highly encourage folks to join in on that. And that's also where you find out about where the public conference calls are. We had a call this morning. We had a call last week. We'll have a couple more later in April or early May. But we've been getting some really, really excellent feedback on the drafts from those public conference calls. So just getting into a little more detail, so file versus module. File is clearly one is the term of art, and it's more concrete and better understood. I'd also point out that the Eclipse Contributor Agreement and its predecessor, the CLA, Eclipse Contributor Agreement ties in the developer contribution, or certificate of origin, the developer certificate of origin from the Linux Foundation, which is very, very widely known and understood in the open source community. It refers to file as well, so this helps make the links a little bit more consistent between the two. Choice of law I've already talked about. This has necessitated the addition of a number of definitions, which I think actually helps clarify the intent and scope of the Eclipse public license. Scripting languages, we added some definitions for source code and executable code, and we've added some terms to make it clear that where source is the same as executable, that you can distribute that source code under another license, just as you could distribute binaries for Java under another license. As I talked earlier, remove the requirement that source code has to be copied by the distributor. We're perfectly happy to have distributors point back to the repositories at Eclipse Foundation as the place to find the source code for what they're distributing. Notices, this is stuff only lawyers can love, but we basically added some requirements around the notices that cannot be removed or altered, and removed a sentence that was in the first that will just move this into a matter of Eclipse Foundation policy rather than the license obligation. just to talk a little bit about GPL compatibility and particularly the motivation. So we've actually, over the last couple of years, in areas like IoT, started to get a bunch of projects that are EPL version 1 plus the BSD. We use a variant of the BSD called the Eclipse Distribution License. And the reason given for a lot of these projects to use the BSD is because they need to be compatible with GPL license projects because of the domain that they live in. So, you know, in IoT land, you often have to have drivers that work with Linux, for example. The disadvantage to doing this is it loses the copyleft nature of the EPL, which means that contributions do not have to come back to the community. And people, in fact, can distribute changes without even making the source code available anywhere. And so, because Foundation and the Eclipse community and the Eclipse public license are all copyleft oriented, and we would like to figure out a way to be GPL compatible without losing the copyleft nature. It's almost counterintuitive that you that the path to GPL compatibility is to give up on copyleft. So that's the motivation for doing this. But it's important. And so the way that we're going to do this is basically copying the way that the Mozilla Public License 2.0 did this a few years ago. But it is important to note that you are not GPL compatible by default. So none of the existing projects that are using EPL 1.0 or by default, you know, any new projects, by default, they are not GPL compatible. The only way to become GPL compatible is to add notices to the code when you first start a new project. And that's when you can do this. But so as we move forward, once this license is approved, you'll be able to start a new project doing it this way. Again, a couple of clean up things in miscellaneous. There's a few things that we are getting rid of. We also added, and to the extent permitted by applicable law, to the warranty and liability limitation of liability sections. And that was done specifically because in certain jurisdictions, such as Germany, you cannot say that you have no warranties and no liability. That's just clarifying that so that we don't have the rest of those sections stricken by a court. So that's it for EPL version 2. Just want to remind everybody that this is a big deal. So if you're listening in either live or recorded and you are working for a company that is a part of the Eclipse ecosystem, I would highly encourage you to bring this to the attention of your legal colleagues and encourage them to join in on EPL Discuss or send me an email if they have any questions. We obviously want to get this right, but we think that this is a long overdue overhaul of the basic legal framework. And I firmly believe that the Eclipse Public License version 2 is going to be a better license than what we have today. And with that, I thank you, and I turn it over to Wayne Beaton.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, evening, I guess. I'm going to talk briefly about some project stuff. Start off the simultaneous release. The oxygen release is appears to be on schedule for end of June 28th, as I recall. The graph of participating projects is actually a little bit misleading. It's kind of flattened a little bit. It looks like we're exactly the same as last year. In fact, we've had a couple of projects who that have merged. We found that the EMF query validation and transaction projects were becoming very stable. I guess not a lot of development going on. A new team has stepped forward to take over responsibility for those projects, and we decided to roll them into a single project since they'd frankly been working with the same set of developers on the same schedule for a number of years. GMF notation was merged into runtime for similar reasons as well. So the handful of project changes like that, we're actually up, I think, we've actually net new 9 projects in this release, and a few other projects did drop out, Gyrex, Time, those projects have opted out. But anyway, so relative stability in the number, absolute number of projects, but it's a little bit misleading in terms of what it represents. For Oxygen, we're still thinking a little bit about what the killer features are going to be. Off the top of my head, it sure looks like Java 9 support and JUnit 5 support are going to be a big deal with Oxygen. It's worth noting that Java 9 itself is actually not available until July 27th, so Eclipse IDE support for that will follow during that time frame, so sometime actually after the formal release. JUnit 5 is expected to be released in September, which is close to our Oxygen.1 release. And again, we'll be make that available as soon as the support for it, as soon as the base projects do their releases. I'm also pretty excited about the Eclema Java code coverage tool project. This is a project that's been part of the Eclipse community for a very, very long time. They last year moved into become an Eclipse project. And again, it's pretty exciting to have them become part of the simultaneous release, and then likely be available in, I think at least the Eclipse IDE for Java developers will include this out of the box. Certainly it'll be easy enough to install after the fact and into other packages. And then of course, language server protocol support is included in the simultaneous release. I'm actually not exactly sure how this will manifest in terms of languages that might be supported, but that's certainly something that's exciting about the release. Contributions to our projects have been on an upward trajectory for some time. I consider this one of my most important metrics. This, in my mind, describes how well we're doing at lowering the bar and engaging the community in our open source projects. So this graph is a number, it shows the number of actual contributors, people who come to the project that are not committers and are contributing at least one commit to the project. I actually have a different graph that shows the contributions themselves, and it's on a similar trajectory. But we do have, I guess, the graph that I would like to do, maybe I'll do that for the next call, is the number of contributors that make multiple contributions, because I think that's an interesting metric of success as well. Just a couple of things to through this thing, because we've been having some discussion about it. I just want to make sure that project teams are aware of a couple of things. So those of you that are working on Eclipse open source projects, your files should have must have copyright statements in the top. And at present, those copyright statements must take this form that I show on the slide. In particular, we currently require that an actual legal entity be listed. So your project is not a legal entity, and the Eclipse Foundation in most cases does not actually own the intellectual property. So don't put the Eclipse Foundation there as a copyright holder. I also put this slide up as a means of just indicating that we are in the process of reevaluating how we specify copyright headers. So this is some ongoing work, and this will likely we will likely be presenting some alternative options for project teams that want to specify copyright headers and license headers in a different way. The intent is to have that done at least have a good draft of it this quarter. Again, just I want to, for those committers that are on the call, I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the granularity of CQs. CQs are the means by which we accept intellectual property contributions for review by the Eclipse IP due diligence process. We get a lot of projects that give us a single record per jar file, and that's probably a little excessive in most cases. The example I'm showing here is a single library or a single piece of third-party content that is expressed as multiple jar files in distribution. It's enough to just do one contribution questionnaire for the IP team to review for all of this content. just kind of, I think the intent here is to save time and energy for everybody. There's very little value in the fine-grained distribution level CQ. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to send me a quick note to emo@eclipse.org. Another change that we did to our process in the last few weeks actually is we reevaluated a board directive we were given in 2015 actually. That board resolution told us that we were not required to do service reviews, IP reviews for purely service releases. Now, we define service releases as bug fixes only. So the idea here is we're expecting a service release to not include a great deal of new intellectual property, and therefore the risk associated with intellectual property is reduced effectively. So in the past, we required the project teams actually do create a record, CQ record in our IPZilla system. You no longer have to do that. So for example, if you have approval for a 4.5.0 of a particular bit of third-party content, a project team can just upgrade to 4.5.1 and just have at her without engaging the IP team. Again, we think this should be valuable to teams, certainly teams that are involved in fast-moving technologies. We expect actually for some project teams, should they choose to do so, may through milestone builds, upgrade service releases, and then when it comes time to do their actual release with a release review, they might decide to do the full IP process on the service release. That's really, we leave that as something for a project team to decide. We've been doing quite a lot of work over the last several months on this new type of due diligence. Now this applies for third-party content only. Traditionally, we have done a very extensive review, which includes a license check, review of the provenance of a contribution, and then a scan for other various anomalies. For example, project code that may have been relicensed in the past, we like to make sure that relicensing was done correctly, or other sorts of things that may be problematic from an intellectual property point of view. Late last year, we introduced a new type of due diligence, which we call Type A versus the old type, Type B. With Type A, we look for license compatibility only. The intent is to get projects running quickly. So all new projects, and we started doing this in the last couple of months, all new projects that come to the Eclipse Foundation now start as Type A. If at some point a project team decides they want to flip to Type B, they're certainly invited to do that. That's really a project team based decision. We actually envision scenarios where project teams will be Type A as a sort of a steady state, and then periodically do a Type B release with the more complete due diligence being done. We are working to, right now we have some tools that the intellectual property team uses to make the license compatibility assessment. These tools that we're using right now are useful in the hands of people who are experts in intellectual property management. We are trying to identify tools that committers or project leads can use to make this assessment, and we've had some success. We're really looking forward to having some sort of self-serve option, or perhaps a fully automated option where the IPZilla or the Genie process that runs under IPZilla can help do the license assessment. We're kind of hopeful that we might be able to hit a case where we can, for 80% of third-party content that's Type A, we can automatically approve it and be done in a matter of minutes rather than hours or days. But again, we're not making, we haven't finalized what that's going to look like yet, and we're hoping to get that done by the end of the year. This quarter, a big part of my personal focus will be to modernize our legal documentation. As Mike said, we're well in the way, we've made a great deal of progress in terms of the Eclipse Public License version 2. We are looking at the software user agreement in particular, to update it to make it applicable to a more general set of technologies. Right now, if you read through the SUA, it is very tightly coupled with the notion of Eclipse plugins and features and whatnot. And we want to disconnect it from that so it is more applicable to a broader set of technologies as is represented by the landscape at Eclipse today. Along with that, the copyright notices and the concept of about files. Copyright notices, really, I think it's just time to take a hard look at how we do those and adapt to the needs of different needs of our projects. About files, as we currently require them, are very specific, again, to specific technology, and we want to generalize the notion into a more generic concept of a notices file. And then, of course, the guide to the legal documentation ties everything together, and that's an important piece of the puzzle, and it, again, also needs to be generalized. With Eclipse plugin development being a sort of a special case of all of the above. In the process, we are also looking into, we have to update the IP due diligence process, which is currently in poster form. We've been patching this for years, and we've decided that it's time to take another run at it and reimagine how it's presented. Hopefully we'll get that done in the quarter, or at least a good solid pass at it. And then, of course, regular updates to the Eclipse Project Handbook to accommodate all of the above changes. Just for preparation purposes, our target is to unleash the new software user agreement with the 2018 simultaneous release. So the Photon release being our first major release that includes the new SUA. If we can get a few projects doing releases with it ahead of that, that would be fantastic. But that's our primary goal. And with that, I will turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Wayne. So again, my name is Paul White. I just want to give a quick overview on some of the activities and conferences and whatnot that we have on the go. First of all, just a quick look back on DevOps US on Eclipse Converge and Eclipse IoT Day that we held in San Jose the week of March 20th. So thanks to everyone who participated. We had, just to give some rough idea of the size, we had about 200 people who participated in the Converge and the Eclipse IoT Day on the Monday, with about 700 people attending the overall DevOps conference from Tuesday through Thursday. This was our first time doing this type of event where we're trying to reach out to a broader community beyond just our typical Eclipse cons. And overall, I think the feedback has been generally positive. The technical program certainly was very strong. The events at DevOps were all recorded, and so then will be posted on our YouTube channel very shortly. And so if you weren't able to attend and are interested in some of the topics, you really want to check it out. Really the talk after talk were just fantastic, and the feedback on the specifics of the talk was great. Also, a thanks to our member companies who sponsored the event. This was a big undertaking for us, and to have that support really enabled us to make this be a success for those who attended. So, just a quick look at the events that are happening this quarter. There are two major events that we're leading. One is the Location Con, which is a first run for our location tech. This is a new event that we've introduced, running in Oakland in May. It is being co-located and co-run by the CalGIS group. So the CalGIS conference has been around for quite some time. This is really an introduction to that community of the open source and the things that we do within location tech. And so we think it's actually an interesting blend of communities. So if that's of interest to you, check it out. The website is there. The other event that is happening this quarter is, of course, EclipseCon France in Toulouse. This is a very, very popular event. Those who attended just find it to be a great experience. It's in the same venue that we've held for the last couple of years in downtown Toulouse. We have cut it back to 2 days again. We tried 3 days last year, but we think the 2 days will actually be a better experience for everybody who's attending. The call for papers for this is closed, and the program should be announced late next week or early the following week. So the program committee is actively reviewing it. The number of submissions and the quality of the submissions was really high. So thanks to everyone who actually submitted to it. Just a quick note that we are adding an X-Text Summit as part of the event. So if that's a topic that's of interest to you, this is the place that you want to go and find out about it. The third thing, and it's not on the slide here, is just to mention that the unconference, we've traditionally done an unconference with Eclipse Conference, and we will do it again this year. It will be held on June 20th, the day before, and that is in a new venue. So we're moving a little bit closer to where the main venue is, and logistically we think it'll work really well. So by all means, check out the details for it. It should be a great place to go. As the marketing team is saying, it's a great place to experience the summer solstice in Toulouse. So join in. Looking beyond this quarter, two major events that are coming up. The Eclipse Summit India will happen again this year in late July in Bangalore. This event had over 100 people attended last year, and we expect it to be even bigger this year. The program committee has been working hard trying to solicit speakers to participate in this. The call for papers for that runs through April 28th. So if that's something that you're interested in being a part of, reach out to that committee. They're certainly looking for folks to join in. And then finally, the major event is in Europe, is our EclipseCon Europe, which is scheduled for October 24th through 26th this year. Again, it's a co-event with the LSGI community event. Every year, the feedback from this event is just rock solid. Last year being the highest evaluations in terms of positive evaluations that we've ever received. And we expect this coming year to be even better. It's in our regular venue in Ludwigsburg, so by all means, check it out. The call for papers for that should open sometime late May, early June, the typical time frame, and will run through mid-July or so. The specific dates will be put on the website as they get pinned down. So by all means, join in, participate in one of these upcoming events. Just a quick mention about some of the demo camps. We will organize another collection of demo camps for the oxygen release. The details of that will be placed on the wiki. So the address is on the slide that you can use and find out the specific topics that will be addressed. And just generally speaking, the events calendar is kept current. So by all means, check it out. And or if you're having an event and want us to post it there, reach out to the contact on that site, and we'll get your event posted. Okay. So that's the agenda that we had for today. I think there are a couple of questions that were posed on the chat that we can put forward. Stephanie. So the first question, Mike, there was a question you had mentioned about new projects with the GPL compatibility.
Yeah.
Is that projects or bundles is the question? Referring to new projects or new bundles?
We manage all licensing at the Eclipse Foundation at the project level. So it would be, I think it would be the project level.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, do we need all copyright holders to approve changing the license of existing projects to EPL 2.0?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. No. And thank goodness for that. So the EPL 1.0 has a provision in it towards the end that says that if a new version is approved, a project can relicense using the new version without seeking the approval of previous contributors. And so because this will be a new version of the Eclipse Public License, it falls under that. So a project can choose to relicense under EPL 2.0 without requiring the individual approval of all contributors.
And I think that's it for the questions that are posted. So thank you to everyone who participated. It's very much appreciated. Just a reminder that this session has been recorded. If you are viewing this via recording, you can post your questions on the YouTube chat, and we'll monitor that for the next few days and get back to you with any required answers. So with that, thank you very much, and have a great day.